.NET MAUI app consists of one or more pages with the interface of each page designed using XAML code. We can, however, design the code in C# as well, and we'll look at that down the road. But for now, we're going to design our interfaces with XAML. We've already seen that with each XAML file, there's also a C# code behind that is indented in the Solution Explorer. In this video, we're going to focus on the XAML design and some basic principles in laying out your user interface. So each XAML file will contain a page, and we've seen we have content pages, we have flyout pages, tab pages. For the most part, we're going to work with content pages. A content page has one container, which often is a layout, and typically that layout is a vertical stack layout or a grid layout, although if we have a lot of content, we might use a scroll view container, which is our single container for the page, which then holds the vertical stack layout. Those are the three most common. There are, of course, several others, but those are the most common scenarios. That layout then can contain views, and the views are the objects or controls that our user interacts with or provides the input and the process and the output. That layout can also contain nested layouts, which then contains views. So we might have a vertical stack layout that contains a horizontal stack layout, and that horizontal stack layout contains views. Now, views can have nested modifiers as well, and some views are containers, such as a frame or scroll view that might contain other views. The XAML code looks something like this. So every object is in tags, and we have an opening and closing tag. So you'll see the content page, there's an opening content page and a closing content page, and there's a slash in front of content page for that closing tag. Then we have the vertical stack layout that is embedded or nested inside the content page. And so we have an opening stack layout and a closing vertical stack layout. That then might contain a label, an entry, and a button. Now, these also can have opening and closing tags, but oftentimes for the views, we can combine them and do an opening tag of a less than symbol and then a closing tag of the slash greater than symbol. And inside of that, after the name of the object, we would have all the attributes or properties that we want to specify for that object. So here we might have a label, an entry, and a button. There could be all kinds of views we could use here. Then this demonstrates the horizontal stack layout that is nested inside the vertical stack layout, and it has an opening tag and a closing tag, and it also contains additional views. In this case, I gave it 3 buttons, but those could be all kinds of things. So that's the basic design principle in terms of using UI. Let's explore some of the code a little bit closer. In the previous video, I demonstrated how to create a new .NET MAUI app and took the default application that comes up and made a few changes in terms of the text for the label, changing it to Hello SMCC, making that text color red and the font attributes bold. And that's a great example of the attributes that we have for a view or any other object within .NET MAUI. Let's take a little closer look at the XAML in this case. I'm going to stop my application from running simply because when I do that, it will give us the toolbox. And I want to demonstrate that if you wanted to add in another object, let's say we want a button, I can just grab that button and drag it over and I'll get a new button, and I can add some text here of, we'll say new button. And if I were to run this now in the emulator, we would see that I now have a button with the text of new button. Again, I'm going to stop. Just as we did in creating Windows forms in the first C# class, we can use the toolbox in .NET MAUI to add objects to our page. Now, for the most part, I just type the code in. I'm not generally dragging things over from the toolbox, but you might find that helpful. It's only here in the beginning. It gives you an idea of what's available as far as views and layouts. So I begin to type a letter. I'm going to type a W, and I get then a IntelliSense that shows me all of the attributes that are available for a button. Now, since I start with W, I actually want the with request. I'm just going to double click on that. And for the with request, I'm going to say 120. Now this is in device independent units, and we're going to look at that much more closely in the next video. One of the challenges in developing for mobile apps is we have all kinds of devices with all kinds of resolutions, and so this is a way of trying to standardize the size so it compiles correctly for the different devices. Generally, we're going to say a phone is probably going to be about 350 to 400 device independent units wide. This will be about a third of the width. And again, I'm going to go back to my application. Let me run it again. And you'll see now that button is not as wide and is about a third of the width of my phone. And if I were to change this down to say 100, we would see that reflected, and now the caption doesn't quite fit, or the text doesn't quite fit the button. So that's called hot reload. As you're making changes to user interface, usually those changes will be reflected automatically. You don't necessarily have to stop and come back. In this case though, I am going to stop because I want to demonstrate a couple of other things here. So I usually type in my code, and there are certain attributes that I use over and over, and I just naturally go to those. But we also have in Visual Studio our properties. I'm going to scroll this up a little bit here. So when I'm inside of a tag or inside of an object, I'm seeing the button properties here, and maybe I want to change the font size or the font family. So the font size, we have some default settings. Maybe I want to make this large. I can also type in a size, which again will be in device independent units. I'm going to make that large. And notice there's a little kind of checkbox button over here on the far right hand side. That has turned black, which says this is now part of that declaration. If I click that, I can choose reset and it goes away. I'll go back and make this large again. So you can add attributes over here in the properties panel. And again, this is helpful. So nice to see what attributes are available to you. So if we wanted to set up, say, a height request, I can come into height request, and let's make this, we'll say 80 units, and that adds it in. Let's take a look at some of the code here. So we're going to start with the content page. It contains two namespaces. So this XMLNS is a XAML namespace, or an XML namespace. So MAUI gives us access to all the objects here, and then the XAML namespace basically gives us access to all of the attributes for those objects. And then we have our class designation. This is first MAUI app was the name of my app, and then the class is main page. We have a main page.xaml and a main page.xaml.cs. So that is all done for us as we created this page. And then inside that content page, I'm going to scroll all the way down here first and show you there is a closing tag for the content page, which has a slash content page. And we have a scroll view. And that scroll view also has beginning and ending tags, and inside that is embedded our vertical stack layout. Now we set some spacing here. So this is going to be spacing between each of the items in the vertical stack layout. There's some padding, and there are several ways of writing padding and margins. So we can have one value, such as 30, which will give us padding left, top, right, and bottom. This gives us, with 2, gives us padding on the left and right and top and bottom. So left and right is 30, the top and bottom is 0. I could also have 4 values here. In this case, it would be left, top, right, and bottom. So I got 30 units on the left and 20 units on the bottom, and no padding top and right. The padding is the distance from this to neighboring objects. In this case, it's going to be the neighboring object is going to be the scroll view, or in essence, really the content page. I'm going to go back to 30, 0. And the vertical options here are center. So everything inside the vertical stack layout will be centered. Our other options here instead of center are start, it's going to be at the top, end, which is everything at the bottom, fill, which is going to basically go from top to bottom, and center. Now you're going to see some center and expand, end and expand, fill and expand, start and expand. Ignore those. Those are basically been deprecated in MAUI. Those are from Xamarin, and gives us some backwards capability to Xamarin. but they have no impact. So really the only ones that are valid in MAUI are center, end, fill, and start. You can put those other ones in. It's going to ignore the and expand. It'll just take it as, it'll take the center and expand as center. I'm going to go ahead and put this at start, and let me run this again so you can see the difference. So now everything is moved up to the top. If I change this to end, the stack layout items are pushed down to the bottom. Let me go back and change this to center. And notice that these are in quotes. Everything, all the attributes are in quotes. Look at the colors coding here, that the name of the attribute's in red, we have an equal sign, and then the value in quotes. So in our vertical stack layout, we then have an image control, and pulling the source of the image from our resources. And you'll see in the images folder, I have the .NET bot.svg. Now this is a SVG file, so it's a vectored file rather than a bitmap file. .NET MAUI, I'm going to convert this to a PNG file bitmap. So that's why we have an extension of .png. Semantic properties for the description are used for screen readers. Our height request is 200. Again, this is going to be in device independent units. And then our horizontal options are to center. So again, here we have center, start, end, and fill. We added that button in. Label, specified the text, semantic properties, the font size. And here's an example where I put in the size in DIU units. Change the text color, font attributes of bold, horizontal options, center. So it's going to center the button. And we have another label and another button. Notice that these are all just self-enclosed as far as tags. We have the beginning tag of the less than, and the right tag, and the ending tag of the / greater than. If you forget to put a tag, you're going to get a squiggly on the next one saying something's out of order here, something's not right. In this case, it says that the tag is mismatched, the closing tag is mismatched. We can specify a separate closing tag. So you can have as one tag with the two combined or two separate tags. So two things to put on the button. We have an x:name equals counter btn. So if you're going to refer to your objects in the C# code, they need to have a name. This is how we declare the name. x:name, capital N, equals, and whatever we want to name the button. There's also a clicked equals, and this is the event handler that's being specified. So when we click the button, the code we want to run is going to be in an on counter clicked event handler in our C# code. Let me jump over to the C# code behind, and you'll see that here we have a private void on counter clicked, and then for our parameters we have object sender and event argz. Those should be familiar from our previous C# class. We're increasing the variable called count, which is listed up here at the top as a global variable. And then if count equals 1, we're going to say you clicked 1 time. Otherwise, we're going to say you clicked X number of times. And again, here we're referring to that button in code. Since we named it, we're changing the text of the button. And then we also have semantic properties set up here for a screen reader. So that's the general overview of writing XAML code. In the next video, we will create our first project, and we're going to create an application that allows us to determine what are the device independent units for any device, whether it be an emulator or a physical device. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the .NET MAUI Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.